You're listening to Chaotically Disciplined with your host Shannon and Zaida, two goofy real life rave moms where we chat about fitness, parenthood, and our love of music festivals.
We'll show you that you can have mid time management skills, occasional meltdowns, and be disorganized as fuck, but still always get shit done.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about our personal music journeys and how they've evolved over time with EDM, what our favorite genres are now, subgenres, and what's stuck and what hasn't.
I feel like when I think about yours or what I know of yours, the the change isn't quite as jarring as mine. I feel like the things that you love like still have continued. And I will say for me, some of that is true. But like what my favorite used to be is not what my favorite is now at all. To whereas I feel like your favorites have always been somewhat consistent or are more closely related to each other, like where
They
they
are
than like mine. So
trance and techno right here.
trans and techno is you. And so for me, it's like it's been trans, melodic bass, melodic techno.
Mhm.
So it's like
We need a
it went
shirt
like
for
that.
that.
It went like this.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I did, but that's actually, it's funny you said the melodic bass because I also have like a little section of me that I love bass. I love
Mhm.
bass and like trippy, like kind of more like psychedelic bass.
You do have, like, a little look in you.
Exactly. Yep. Precisely. So there's
Yeah,
a little look inside.
there's a little bit of a look there.
Yeah.
So, my f I will say my first exposure to EDM was trance because of you
Mhm.
and Kenny. I kind of mentioned this on a previous episode. I've been with him since 1999, and he bought that first ATV CD. He bought, like, that Raymond's mix, and so it was, like, all I knew of. I didn't even know it was called EDM back then, like, it was just trance. I thought all of it was trance, that's what I thought, 'cause I didn't know anything about it. I don't think too many people back then really knew. I mean, people now still call if they're not into EDM, they call everything's techno. Everything's techno. Like, it's like, no like, I'll never forget when we watched Trolls. It was, like, the 2nd Trolls movie, the animated movie. The
Mhm.
techno trolls were in there, not playing techno. Like, it was not techno, what they were playing. It was just, like,
Lies.
very basic EDM, and I'm like, "That's what the rest of the world thinks is techno, is just all of this." So that's kind of
It's
like
advertisement.
right. So I just thought trance was like the one genre. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And again, back then, I only really liked it if it was vocal trance. Like, I could not listen to just nothing with any sort of, like, lyrics or vocals. Like, I was like, "This puts me to sleep." Like, and me and Kenny would go on, like, long car rides, and he would wanna just listen to, like, trance, whether it had, like, lyrics in it or not. And I'm like, "How can you drive on road trips listening to this?" Because I would pass out and, like, crash the car. I needed, like, something to sing along to.
That's
So,
hilarious.
I will say that was my first exposure. I don't know, we can kinda call it my first love because I have now so many, like, nostalgic memories to a lot of those initial songs that I was exposed to, like, "In and Out of Love" by Armin and, like, some other older things. So, that was sort of, like, what I first knew of EDM. And then when I got a little bit more into it, I kinda knew what everybody tends to know when they're not really involved in EDM, which is, like, the pop EDM people, like
Mhm.
Marshmello and David Guetta and early, like, 2010s, you had Afrojack who would, like, do songs with other people, like, stuff that most people, even if they're not ravers, know. So I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." Like, I can get on Alesso, we had Heroes, stuff that was making it onto, like, mainstream, like, radio stations.
Like EDM, anything that's on Sirius Radio,
Yeah,
kind of.
anything that was on, like, XM, Sirius, and it wasn't even I didn't even listen to, like, BPM, which back then was something else in the 2010s. There was a couple of EDM stations, and
There was
BPM
like a chill something
well,
station.
The Chill, I think, still exists, but BPM was called something else, I can't remember, I'm, like, blanking out. But anyway, and not even the ones that make it just to that, like, it would make it to, like, the top 10, regular, like, pop radio stations. You'd get David Guetta and Afrojack and Alesso on those, and you got it they were still making it to those stations back then.
Oh, wait,
Um
wait. I have to say a tangent real quick about that. So because I was so young at that time, and I was trying to, like, get this music but had no resources. Like, I didn't have LimeWire in my house, but I would go it would be on airplane rides because that was the only time I had Sirius, so I would write down the names of the songs and the artists so I could YouTube them at a later date, and that was it.
That's a commitment. That is that's I mean, people don't know how good they have it when it comes to, like, access to music and figuring that kinda stuff out. Now
Right.
it's like it's so fast, and, like, back then, like, you had it was a commitment if you really wanted to figure this stuff out, like, find out what the song was or who the artist was, get the music, pay the dollar off of, iTunes for it, burn the CD, like, all of this stuff, right?
Wait on the radio, just sitting there waiting for a song to come on you
Waiting for
love.
it to come on, yeah, like, it's too easy to have access to it's very nice, but it is not how we grew up figuring this stuff out. So, like,
Generation.
that was sort of, like, that initial evolution, and then when I started to get, I guess, sort of exposed to a little bit more. So Kenny was the one that was always into EDM. He would this was back in the day again when you had to like buy music off of iTunes, pay per song. So he had downloaded some stuff. And when he was deployed, I burned a CD of songs that he really liked and I would play it in the car for the kids because it was like music that reminded us of dad while he was gone. And one of the songs on there was the Dirty South song, the Find My Way, I think. So sort of
Mhm,
like that Swedish House Mafia inspired type music. And then
mhm.
he had a Seven Lion song on there, which was the Still With Me, his remix of Tritonal.
That's one
So
of
that
my
was like
favorites.
the first Seven Lion song I ever knew. And that's when I was like, I like whatever this is. And that kind of started the journey into melodic bass, although I had no clue what any of this was called. Neither one of us did at the time because, again, all we sort of knew was trance. He had always liked Armin and Above and Beyond and that kind of thing. And then that was my first exposure to Seven Lions, and we had Sirius XM. And so then I would start to like gravitate to the songs played on there that sounded like that. And so I think probably around that time period there was, like, "Don't Leave," which was another Seven Lion song with Ellie Goulding. That's when Illenium started to come out and Fractures was played all the time. So that kind of era was when I was like, "I like what this is." And so when he took me to my first festival, which was Ultra, the only names on the lineup I knew were, like, the pop ones, like Afrojack, David Guetta, uh I knew I knew of Dash Berlin because that was a trance favorite that Kenny had exposed me to a little bit, and I liked the vocal trance of like that. Then we went there, we were super into that time period, so that was 2017 that I went. Faded by Alan Walker had, like, blown up, so we were, like, huge into Alan Walker. So it was sort of like I was just getting exposed to stuff that was already really popular, so that's what I liked because that's all I knew.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of I knew trance, I knew what I liked about trance, and then I had started to become exposed to melodic bass, and future bass, didn't really know what those were called yet, and then knew a handful of artists, and that's what I was really interested in seeing. So when we went to EDC right after that in 2017, Millennium was on the lineup, Fractures was, like, huge. I was a super at that point, I was like, "This is the stuff that I really, really like." And what's interesting about that is Seven Lions specifically, I think the reason why I gravitated towards him specifically, and this was like the merge of trance and melodic bass, is because that's what he does. He like blends those things together. Like he's not the only one who does it, but he was like the pioneer of it and my first exposure to it. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was an easy transition because I kind of got to hear elements of like this thing that I liked, which I think bass I might have gravitated towards because we were super big, like, into, like, rock and metal shows, so, like, you get
Right.
kind of, like, that heavier vibe from it, but then as far as EDM went, I really did love trance, and so I got kind of, like, both experiences with that genre.
There's, like, some
Um
emotional component there,
Yes,
that you
it
feel, like, little on
yes.
the emo side of it in a way,
Yeah,
but
no,
in a
it's
pretty
really
way.
yeah, and he just does, like, these really big epic sounds, and it's crazy, and so that's why I think I gravitated towards it because you get, like, heaviness, but you also get, like, an emotional connection. So I got, like, the heaviness from, like, my rocker side wanted, but then, like, the emotional side that you get from trance. So then we kinda sat there for a while. I'll pause for a second and give you a chance to kinda, like, go over your backstory, sort of, like, up until the midpoint, and
Yeah.
then I'll pick back up on my midpoint after you.
To get started, when it came to hearing any type of dance music, it started literally on Disney Radio when I heard DJ Sammy Heaven. Okay, we're talking 7 years old here.
I love that.
And then, I'd get my allowance, and I eventually bought a from Newbury Comics from Gigi D'Agostino, who is a French artist, and he made the song "The Riddle," and you know that song that's like, "Meh, meh, meh, ba-da-dum, dum, dum, ba-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum," you know that one?
Yeah, that
That's
was a really good
so
rendition of it because I was like, "I'm not gonna know it." I was like, "Oh, yeah, I
practiced.
do know it."
I practiced to make sure it didn't sound horrible. And so I'm listening to this music. I have no idea where it's coming from, but it's electronic of some type. And then Cascada, any type of Eurodance that I heard.
My god, I forgot about Cascada. So I knew, like, this is the stuff I did in, like, college before I was really into any of this too. Yeah, for
Right.
sure. Cascada was on MySpace for me, that song.
True.
MySpace
My
song.
Yes.
That was a MySpace
Oh,
song, 100%.
right. It's like journeying through like buying CDs at Newbury Comics or FYE, making CDs on LimeWire, FrostWire, and then MySpace music, because that's how you could upload pretty much
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah.
So that was a good way to find it too.
Oh, man. Now I know, like, DJ Sammy and, like, with, like, is that DJ Sammy did Heaven, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of realm was like when you were young.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then once I had, the dating life in high school, my first boyfriend introduced me to trance music. So he served a great purpose in my life, and that was it.
Everyone
And
comes into your life to teach you something.
and it was to hook me up with Tiesto and Armin. So once we found out about that, so I was listening to that music and I was instantly attracted to it. I think I said this before, where like it has the piano and string elements in it, so I just loved it. So Armin, Paul Van Dyke, Dash Berlin, those types of artists. That's what I was listening to. But then I got to college a few years later and started to listen to the Dead Mouse, and this is now on Pandora. So Pandora was really great because it was also connecting you with like songs that. So for me, I love Four Strings. Four Strings is my number one trance group of all time, and they've taken me away, but they have a lot of other songs that I really love. And they just suggest all those different radios based off of certain
Right.
songs you listen to. So that was kind of like, okay, expanding the horizons. I heard Prids for the first time in college, so I was liking progressive, but I didn't know what it was called, you
Mhm.
know? So it'd be fun to hear it at parties and things like that. But at the same time, I was also listening to some bass, and He Who Must Not Be Named, Bass Nectar. Definitely loved his music. It's true. I love it. But
We'll exit that out.
right, I know. At the time, we don't know that it
At
was
the
me.
time, we didn't know. We didn't know, we were all ignorant.
So I liked all the music you were talking about too, kind of like Alan Walker, W&W, things that I'm hearing on BPM or, whatever radio, because I didn't know how to really research the music. Things like Glitch Mob and Emancipator, Hippie Sabotage, that type of music that's like kind of down tempo, electronica, that's kind of like my side gig. But I was mostly listening to trance. Later on, I realized that a lot of the music that I also liked in the trance realm was more like tech trance and lyricless. I actually like lyricless trance because I love vocal trance and like uplifting trance, but I like some songs that have minimal lyrics. I think it's because of the way my brain works, where my brain is so busy that it helps me to kind of like just zone out or get in a zone without
That is
vocals.
actually sorry to interrupt, but, like,
No, no, so
you
good.
reminded me because I didn't write this down because I was like, what actually happened to inspire the transition to me liking the music that I like now?" And that was part of it was, "Oh, it's not bad to listen to when you're, like, trying to focus on something." So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I would use it to
Mm.
study. So I was
That's
listening
how it
then.
started for me.
Right. So it's like it helps you do a task because you can like kind of zone into it, but it's not like distracting you. So
Mhm.
when I was in college, I started listening to Trance Around the World with Above and Beyond. And so that was a combination of trance and progressive. And then I discovered that Armin had his own radio show. So that's kind of I would listen to it every Friday night. Like, it was like a part of a ritual for me.
Mhm.
Um, just because I love music so much, it was something that I'd spend my time searching, and it was just enjoyable. And so that's kind of like the mid-range for me because that takes me all the way up until like my mid-20s, right before I'm going to go to Miami and go to school. And that opened up a lot for me at Ultra because that was my first like real festival. And that opened up more music taste for me. But I went down there really having trance as my like focus. And listening to more hard trance, more tech trance. That was kind of like where I was in the middle of my journey. And then it would transition after that. So Stoneface and Terminal also started playing music that was kind of similar to some techno. So I started developing the taste for techno, I'd say, in that time frame where I was hearing more subgenres of like really high tempo music. That is what I'm attracted to, like really fast trance, fast techno, some psytrance because of that. So I feel like my taste evolved from more vocal trance to more like upbeat, very fast, intense sounds.
Before you got to Miami or went to your first Ultra or after?
I'd say it was like kind of like an overlap.
Okay. So you were
Right.
already starting to, like, explore that or be curious about it, but then actually attending the festival is what, like, really kind of was, like, the harder turning point or, like, your like we mentioned, your turn has always been, like, a soft, like, a arc into it. Mine has been, like
Yes, exactly. Yes, it is a little more of a soft turn because and it's interesting to learn about like the origin of the music. You know, it all kind of evolved in like the 80s and 90s where they only have so many like the producers only have so many technologies to use, but
Right.
like house and techno was like kind of being formed around the same time and then trance came from that as well. So it was really interesting because I did some research and like Paul Van Dyke was a part of all of that. Like there's like different artists who are considered just trance artists, but they're playing music with what we call techno artists. So there's a lot of overlap. Today's version of what techno sounds like might be called something else back then, so there's this interesting involvement of what everything is.
Well, even you look at a
Um,
festival like Dream State. Don't I only recently in the last like not this year or last year, but the 3 years before that were the Dream States that I attended. So it had already included like more melodic techno, harder techno,
mhm,
psytrance, like these harder, like, they have stages completely devoted to this stuff. So I don't know if it was always like that. But when you tell somebody that's never been to Dream State about, it's a trance festival, they picture more classic, uplifting vocal trance.
right.
So
And that's
you
not the only type. That's
that's
not the only
not the
type that's
only type.
been around for a
You
while.
can go to a festival like Dream State and actually probably hate that type of music and still have a good time because if you're super into techno or the harder stuff, that's also gonna be there. Which is your point with trance and techno, like, they're cousins, like, they're not that far apart from each other. So you could be surprised what if you just kind of opened your mind, you might end up liking more than you think with those like kind of related genres because it's not that far of a reach, even though the vibes of the stuff that you like to listen to can be completely different.
It depends on the subgenre of each one, where, like, you can have, like, your euphoric, uplifting vocal trance that's over here, and then you have, like, industrial techno this way over here, okay?
Mhm,
But then you have the overlap where, different subgenres, like, take from each other, and, you know,
mhm.
it's really I love to see where artists, like, kind of flip things, but not everybody does.
It's like we're sort of like at the midpoint. So I'm a sort of like in the melodic bass future bass era where, like, it was Millennium, Seven Lions, like, those were the guys that I really liked. And then the pop EDM, people, and that probably when it comes to house, the only house I ever really liked is we're kind of in, like, 2018 era, so now I've attended my, Ultra and EDC already, about to go back to my 2nd EDC. We really loved Kygo. That's when
Mhm.
Firestone blew up, um
That
and
Your Tip was the best. I love that
stole the
song.
show. Like, the Kygo was, like, having his, like, moment, and I was like, "This is cool, like, this is a vibe." Like, total we loved pool parties. That's, like Tropical House is like a pool party vibe. It's very Florida. We like
It's
it's
literally
just
Florida
it
and
is
the
very,
island.
like,
I
beach
love
party, pool party, like, it's just so happy. Like, it's fun to listen to when you're in an environment that,
You can't be
elevates
in a
that.
bad mood hearing it. I
You
mean,
can't be in a bad mood hearing that at a pool with a drink in your hand. Like, in Tropical House, it's a fun vibe, and Kygo was having his moment then. So, like, that was probably the only, like, that I was aware of at the time, genre of house that I liked. And so that was around, like, 2018. In 2019, we saw I wanted to see Above and Beyond at that EDC, or Kenny did, and I was sort of, like, still very indifferent to it because I didn't know a lot. I knew some, but I was still sort of like, I don't know them as well as other trance artists, but sure. And I loved Gareth Emery, and he was playing, like, right after them. So it was literally, like, it was Eric Prydz into Above and Beyond into Gareth Emery, that EDC, all at Circuit Grounds, and so we went in a little bit early. It was the end of his set, and he was playing, like, Prida stuff, and that's when I didn't really know much about Eric Prydz either, and that's when I saw the visuals and, like, heard the music, and I was like, "What is this?" Like, so then that kind of, like, ignited exploring more of that kind of stuff, but then that Above and Beyond set was amazing. I was, like, huge fan after that, and then the Gareth Emery set was amazing, so, again, still more trancey stuff. Still into trance. I love melodic bass, but still into trance at this time, but had some, like, tropical house exposure, so it's slowly, like, expanding a little bit, nothing, like, too crazy. And then I would say when it really started to change so this was 2019, and
Mhm.
remember when we talked about this aired in the festival moments, right? 2020 happened, and we got festivals taken away.
Yes.
So, but we are all sitting at home listening to music. So I think that also was part of it, like just being stuck at home and you start getting exposed to other things because, like, what else are you going to do other than just at least listen, watch people's live streams? So, like, that might have kind of started it. But in October of 2021, which was the first EDC back, I'm pretty sure that is when John Summit did like a camp pre party because he was just starting to like come up. And I loved that's when, like, Human was, like, about to come out. I think that's when he first played it, and I loved that. This was the other thing too. Let me go back, actually. COVID, we're shut down. Me and you had decided we wanted to learn shuffling.
Mhm.
You c you When you shuffle, you're shuffling to genres that I wasn't really into before that. That kinda started to expose me to those different genres that I hadn't even really liked. Like, I used to hate techno. I thought it was repetitive. And then, like I mentioned, when you touched on, well, sometimes that stuff can just, like, put you in a zone when it doesn't have lyrics and it's sort of repetitive like that, where you can, like, study or, like, retain information better. And I was studying to get my personal training certification. So I was like, yeah, actually, I would put it on and I'm like, "This is not bad. It actually does help me study." And so then that started happening with that. And when we came back, so then by the time we went to that EDC in October, John Summit was a factor, I think, in changing, like, the sounds that I was gravitating towards, us practicing shuffling. I had been exposed to Cascade because of that, because a lot of his songs were easy for me to shuffle to, and he had jumped to, like, a top artist for me. So now at this point, like, by October EDC, I was still listening to melodic bass, and that was still I still considered that, like, my first love, but I was listening to a bunch of other stuff because of practicing shuffling, and Cascade was, like, at the top of people that I, like, fell in love with. So,
Mhm.
that had changed that, and I also this kinda I don't, where this falls in the journey, but I loved Rez because of you and Craig. Like, Craig loved Rez, and so she was also, because of the tempo, easy to shuffle to when you're
Mhm.
learning. It's very slow. It's not what people shuffle to, but, like, for me, it was easy to, like, practice.
So good.
So, had, like, a completely different genre I was exposed to there.
Rez is just a
Rez
genre.
is just random. Like, she's probably the only artist in that genre that I really listen to, but it was, she's in the mix there. So, like, that was kind of like I was expanding the things that I listened to, I think because of trying to practice this new hobby during like, lockdowns and stuff, shuffling with you, and you would expose me to new music and new artists. And that's kind of what led into like the gravitation away from like melodic bass and into more like housey progressive melodic techno type stuff. So like in May of 2022, the first real EDC, as some people like to call it back, that's when I discovered Boris Brejcha, like,
Too.
which is like minimal, I think he calls it like minimal house or something. Like I don't even know what I don't even know what genre,
I know. It's hard to explain because it depends on the track.
like circus techno or circus house or something like that, because it is. Like it's just it's like it's his own thing, but I just was like, if you had told me if you if you had told me in 2017 that that would be like one of my top artists and like things to listen to, I would have been like, shut the fuck up. You're insane, because his stuff, like his music, you have to listen to his songs for like 5 minutes before there's even a drop. It's just, and I love it. I love it. Like it's so good. And so that again, at that
He
point, I
has a
wasn't even,
sexy little flow in his music.
yeah, like I wasn't even interested in listening to melodic bass. We had become really good friends with a lot of the people we're friends with who are melodic bass artists. So at that point, I'm like, I'm only listening to it if it's my friends, and because obviously I enjoy it because that's my friends. But like other than that, it wasn't like the thing that I was gravitating towards. I was gravitating towards these other genres. And I think the vibes that I was really interested in at that point, initially because of shuffling, but then it just exposed me to other things where I was like, this is really cool. Is like my vibe back then was like Gen X and Art Bat and
Are bad,
stuff
yes.
like that. Art Bat
And
was like
Tale of Us.
Tale of Us, like that's right before Anima was the Anima we know. Like it was like right at the start of that. I was very interested in that like darker sound that again some people call it like progressive house, melodic techno. It's like everybody kind of defines it a little bit differently, and they all kind of share. They're all kind of like holding hands with each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right about Art, and Artbat was the start of that. I
Artbat
remember.
was Artbat was a big start of me liking that sound. I'm trying to think. Let's see. So like fall of 2022 was when I went to go see my first Rufus show with friends. That changed a lot of things because I had always heard about Rufus, how it was just an experience you needed to see. I knew people who that was like their top artist, and I'd only known a couple of songs, but like I didn't get it. And then I saw that and I was like, holy shit.
For sure.
That's a whole separate thing also. But I just kept getting like slowly just opening my mind and being exposed to more genres. That was sort of like 22, 23 was sort of the period where like I listened to a lot of things like Rufus, and I went to Cross Proper with you for the initial Cross Proper. That was, people like Christoph and Tin Liquor and like that kind of music. So I was like, I really love this. Like this is really great. But even that is sort of like it's got housey elements, but then it still has like trancy vibes. That's where it sounds like it's like a really far-reaching journey, but all of these things have something in relation to each other. Like even when I got into melodic bass, I got into melodic bass from an artist who connected it very heavily with trance elements, and that's where I was coming from. And then that got me into other
In a
melodic bass. Yeah. So it
way.
got me into melodic bass that maybe wasn't so much trancy, but that's how it got me there. And then those, then I kinda got into the house and techno-y stuff. So that's kind of like 23 was probably where I was very firmly in the area where I'm at, also because we had gone to that dream state together in 22, and that's when I had started to like Miss Monique, and we saw that set, and I was like, "This is the
Sold.
stuff that I like. This is the stuff that I like." Anybody who does anything that sounds like this is like, I could listen to that all day and not get tired of it. So the end of 22 into 23 was when I kind of found, I feel like, where I'm at. It's not that I don't like or enjoy melodic bass anymore, but if I'm listening to it, I tend to listen more. I don't really listen to new melodic bass stuff, again, unless it's my friends putting it out or clients putting it out. Uh, then obviously, yeah, I'm going to listen to all their new stuff and love it. Other than that, if I'm listening to any of that genre, it's the stuff that it's not new stuff. It's stuff that came out when I first started to like get into all of this because it's like a nostalgic feeling for me. When I'm listening to new music or new artist, it's not melodic bass. It's like melodic techno, progressive, like all of the stuff that I actually really gravitate towards now. That's like when I'm exposing myself to new songs, new artists, new music, it's always that genre. That's just where I'm at. And I've kind of just been there for a couple years. So yeah, that's kind of the whole journey. I
And
guess.
Cream. Don't forget about Cream.
Oh God, Cream. I can't believe I forgot about Cream. Yeah, Cream is a top artist for sure.
Well, I just thought of these two things where like our tattoo, the second line of it is music is how we decorate time, right? So it's like such a great way to explain that like you're in different seasons of your life and like your mood in that season is going to change. And so it's cool to see how like the tree of music evolves, whether it's like within the same kind of like web where it's very close but still different, or if it's totally opposite, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to take a look at that journey and be like, "Dang," because like, you still will listen to the same things, but then you've evolved in certain ways, and it kind of evolves with your whole personality and, like, how you present yourself, which I think is kinda cool, and,
Yeah.
it's just a nice way to reflect on your own personal life, your own personal, um, expression. Even
Yeah.
if you're not an actual artist, like, I think it's still important to, like, go back and kinda understand yourself through music if you are a music person, like, take the time to
Hmm.
do it. It feels
Yeah.
good to know yourself in this way. So let me start with kind of like the alternative, like electronica down tempo music that I was listening to also. Like Odessa was another one for me that
Mm.
was really, really big, where it was like not too much lyrics, but it's just really beautiful music. Taiko, Kygo, like you were saying, and some artists like Tipper and Spangle, like really trippy, weird shit. You know, I don't know how to explain it. Just go listen to it. And so we love that. We went to see Tipper and Spangle at Red Rocks right
Mm.
before EDC 2019. So it was that same time frame. You know, just depend on the mood what I'm listening to. But when I was in Miami, that's when I started listening to more house music. And so it was a
Mhm.
lot of I actually really love Blondish because my friend Shy introduced me to Blondish, and that was like Burning Man vibe. I don't know how else to explain it. I've never been to Burning Man, but it's trippy, kind of. It just has its own flavor. And so living in Miami, you have exposure, of course, to so many different Latin cultures. And so a lot of the house that I was listening to was more kind of like worldly house, different languages with house music. That's kind of what I gravitate towards. I didn't listen to anything other than that at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but then going to EDC and kind of being exposed there, I was listening to more, I guess, like bouncy house, but wasn't the
Mm.
biggest fan of it, but I didn't know much else. But house always puts me in a good mood. Like listening to John Summit or like different artists, like no matter what it is for me, house, I always am like, like I feel good when I hear it. You know, I don't really have any subgenres that I cannot stand. I know you're not a big fan of like piano house, you know. What was that?
Yeah.
What artist?
Get house piano out of there. Anything that has like house piano in it, I'm like, you just ruined the song.
You ruined it. It's over
I
for
know
me.
some people love it. I don't house piano is not my favorite element in a song, but
And that's
I
okay.
guess the house that's more like that that has a lot of house piano in it, that's not my favorite house genre. Pretty much any other I can like get down with. Like I like tech house, I like
Mhm.
progressive house, I like, pretty much anything else, but I'm not a big the
Yeah, I can't
the
stick
house
around with it for
piano.
too long, but I will say
Mhm.
that, like, I do like LPGOB. I've listened to a set of hers that, and I
Yeah,
saw
I do
her.
like some of her stuff.
Yeah, she
Mhm.
she's like a deadhead and her parents were deadheads, so she puts this, like, interesting combo with her house music, so I really like her. But anyhow, so I'm still listening to trance, and it starts to evolve to more tech trance while I'm in Miami, and then around the 2019, 2020 timeframe is when I started, listening to more techno. It just came up through my Spotify. Artists like Anna, Enrico Sangiuliano, they came up and I was like, "What is this?" And I was actually studying for California, law exam, which was a hell of an exam. So it's again kind of like exam music or study music is kind of how I that is how I originally started listening to it. And then I started applying it to shuffling. So I'm glad you brought that up because I just love the sound of it, but it was way
Mhm.
too fast. I could not
Yeah.
keep up with the shit to dance to. So I was like then starting to listen to more house music that you had given me, or Cascade is a great example of really good
Mhm.
music to listen to when you're trying to dance, and it went with the vibe of, the type of shuffling that we liked, so that was really cool.
Mhm.
But I did start getting into more specific artists with techno at that point. So I'm listening to Anna. Her husband Weba has a
Mhm.
the type of techno that I really like, and this is a lot of drum code artists. So Leighton Jordani, drum code, all the music that he put out in his early career, I love, and I enjoy his music now too, but I specifically like his drum code era. And Emily Lenz, saw her at
Mm.
Space, and she is so dope, dude. Like I love just the sound that she puts out for it's like a combination of sounds. It's not just techno. You know, she has certain songs that are techno, but there's definitely different influences in her songs. And I love her vocals because her vocals are her a lot of the time, and she has like a really cool accent. So I love her. And then at that point, I developed the trance and techno brand that I'm wearing right now, and it put me in a position which is nice on Instagram. It is the algorithms can be helpful because it helps you discover music also in a nice way. Um, and artists like AKKI, Nastia, just different people that are working with different sounds. Like I've heard someone call it cosmic techno, um, kind of like what dark techno, that subgenre, and cosmic techno, they kind of are
Mm,
similar. It's
I heard
interesting.
that. That's interesting.
Yes. So, I gravitate towards artists like that, and then me and Craig went to Iceland. We heard Exos, which plays more like minimal techno, but some are techno too. And it was great because he's like one of the only techno artists from Iceland. And my friend sent me a link. You should go see him while you're there. I'm like, okay. We looked him up. We go to the show, and it was like his last show in Iceland for years to come. Like he was taking a break for some reason. So we were in this like little tiny venue, and it's like we were listening to Viking techno. It's straight up. Like, that's the best way I would put it, and I also wanna say before I forget, I gravitate towards techno that has, like, the Latin lyrics to it. It sounds like Viking techno. It's funny to hear it because you're just listening to this, like, language you do not understand, but it's Viking techno. Since then, I've been just exploring different techno artists and trance artists. A lot of stuff is overlapping. The Instagram algorithm will give you different record labels to listen to also. Marie Vaught has a really good record label that puts out a lot of like acid sounds, acid techno. And, you know, like you were saying at Dream State, they cover a lot of ground where they have like your trance artist, but you have the techno artist, and that's kind of where they come together. Now I've been diving in a little bit more to like hard groove and groove music, which is fast paced. It's on the techno side of things, but it has almost like a little bit more of like a happy vibe to it, if you will, versus like dark techno is more of like a sexy vibe. There's some bass that has a sexy vibe to it, but there's some
Yeah.
techno, the sexy vibe
Yeah.
to it. I was gonna say, like, strippers be dancing to it.
Yeah.
It's strip club music. I'm just kidding. Oh my god. That's a subgenre, is just like pole dancing techno. But anyway, and this is all in
Baby
theory.
making music.
Baby making music. Exactly. So that's
Well,
where I'm
that's
at now. I also will say that there's so many moments for me where I'm like, "Oh, I love that vibe. I love that vibe." Art Bat definitely, and Tale of Us. When I heard that sound that they created, I was inspired because I'm like, "This is something that is, like, taking my attention, and I just wanna keep listening to it again and again."
yeah. I feel
Every
like
time
when I discovered that, that was what sort of like those people were like the beginning of like that sound. Not a lot of people were doing that. And now since then it got so popular that lots of people are emulating that, which some people will argue is an issue. Other people, I'm sort of like, I mean, why wouldn't you emulate something that's popular to make your music sound like that? Like it was, I don't know. But definitely
but
a
I
lot
feel
of people have that sound, but they were kind of like the first artists I was aware of that had like this very different thing that I liked a lot.
yes. So I feel like for me, and I'll just summarize, like we talked about this before, you're better at it than I am. You're able to, like, I think, seek new music more and like kind of go down the road of what's current. I have to force myself to do that because I am interested in what's current, what is actually, being created. I want to hear new music, but I would call it a negative trait where I can get stuck in nostalgia and I can repeat music again and again and again. And it's because I get a physiological response from listening to it. Like, it's nostalgic. I get the
Right.
buzz on. I'm like, I'll just keep listening to the same thing. And because it's a comfort zone, I feel like it's like a safe space in a way, you know?
Yeah. I think everybody does that. Like you're chasing a feeling when you're listening to music.
Chasing a feeling
Um,
for sure.
you're chasing a feeling for sure, like, that's why you're listening to it. Even if the feeling is like, "I need to be able to zone out to focus on that." You're making that choice with that music selection so it can be background noise. You don't want it to be overly distracting, but you need something to set the vibe and you're gonna study. You know what I mean? Like, or if you're upset, you will put on music that you know is gonna make you cry because you need it to help you like let it out. So like you're making that choice in the moment based on like the feeling that you're trying to evoke. I think everybody does that. But I most of the time when I open up Spotify, I hit the on repeat playlist. So that's, like, never gonna change change because 'cause I'm constantly listening to what's already on repeat for me, and that will happen that will go on for, like, weeks before I decide to go back to, like, listening to, like, at least the rest of my liked playlist
You feel me
library.
on that.
Yeah, like, I just open up my on repeat because 'cause I'm, like, still not sick of any of this stuff yet, and then I just repeat it every single day multiple times, and so, like, I do that too. I think the reason why if I'm at all better about exposing myself to new music than you are, which I don't know if that's true, but let's just pretend that's true, is because of my clients. It's because of my job. And so I have these group chats with my clients and they're always sharing music. And a lot of times I don't always know the artist they're talking about, or I'll go to a festival with them and they'll drag me to a set that like I otherwise would not have chosen to go to. Like that happened this year. It did not turn me on to that particular music or artist, but last year it changed my mind about drum and bass because I never liked drum and bass. I was always like, it's okay if it can be worked into a set for like a song here and there, but like I could not listen to a whole set for like an hour of drum and bass. Like that would get boring to me. That that is not the case anymore, and that isn't my top genre, no, but I had so much fun at a set that I went to last year with my clients. It was like a Sub Focus. I wanna say it was like Sub Focus Back to Back Dimension, like, it was a full like, just drum and bass.
Mhm.
It was so fun. It was so much fun, and then once I really started, like, listening more to those artists, I was like,
Mhm.
"Drum and bass is so happy." Like,
It's
you
so
can't
catchy.
listen to it and, like, be in a bad mood, like, it will just, like it's so happy, and so I'm like, "Why did I not like, what was why did I not I don't know why I didn't like this before." So that's why I always tell people to just be open-minded because I used to hate techno, now it's, like, my favorite. I didn't like drum and bass at all. Now I like it. I wouldn't say I love it, it's my favorite, but I like
You
it, could
enjoy
totally
it.
do a whole set. I'm not against it at all. I used to I always liked trance, couldn't stand psytrance. I felt the same way about that as I do or did drum and bass, where it's like, "Oh, throw a psytrance song in here every once in a while, but I don't want a whole set." I could do multiple sets of psytrance, like,
Right.
I could listen to pretty much almost anything,
Me
um,
too.
in the right environment with the right people, and if I don't think I would be that open-minded if it weren't for my job, for working with people who listen to multiple different types of genres, who expose each other to different kinds of music, to artists like they wouldn't know otherwise, and that includes me. Like, it's not just them doing this for each other, like, it's also for me. Like, I don't know all the genres and all the artists, and I don't think I wouldn't have time to keep up with this, any more than you say you do, and so I get exposed to it from them,
Mm.
um, which I'm really thankful for because it's so much more fun when you're, like, open to the idea of listening to something that maybe you normally wouldn't have.
Yep.
You might find out you still don't like it, but what if you find out that you do? And then you have so much more possibilities when you go to a music festival to have a good time no matter where you end up because you are not limiting yourself to only liking one particular artist or genre. Like, if you do, that's fine, but when you go to a festival, you are paying money, and if you wanna post up at Quantum Valley or Neon Garden and not move, like, that's fine, that's your choice, that's how you wanna spend your money, but for me, I would like to be able to kind of end up anywhere in the festival and really, like, get the most bang for my buck and be able to, like, find different artists at different stages and have, like, all those different experiences, and you can't have that if you're being really close-minded to, like, the sounds that you think you only enjoy. Because,
Yes.
like we've talked about, so much of them are intertwined and they have overlapping elements with each other that you might not realize until you give it a chance to listen to it. And then
Right.
a couple little elements in certain songs or other genres might remind you, even subconsciously, about something you already like, and so then you're, like, hooked on that artist, and then that artist might end up exposing you to other artists that sound completely different, and before you know it, you're at a stage you never would have thought you were gonna be at. That's how it happens, so
Definitely. I like that, and I think that yeah, you're right. I appreciate the I think it depends on the season of life because I was searching for music and, like, looking for new things before I had my first son. That was, like, my number 1 hobby. But it's changed now that I have not as much time, and I try when I do have a moment to, like, listen to new music when I can because it also helps me get out of, like, ruts. If I'm stuck in a rut, I need to listen to new music because music exposure helps you to also, like, channel new energy, new versions of yourself. So I think it's important for self-development if you are a music lover in a way, like, it helps
Mhm,
it is parallel to your own progression as a person somehow, you know?
mhm.
So I appreciate that aspect. So it definitely has changed with motherhood and I do try to seek new music, especially when we went to Elements this past a few months ago. I did look to new music and even the artists that come on at 3 p.m., they might be what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be the headliner. So that has been something I've prioritized is giving a chance to everybody because you never know. They
Mhm.
just might be up and coming artists that, just because they're not popular yet, that doesn't mean that you're not going to vibe with them. Um,
Right.
so I feel like it's a, it's almost like a responsibility of a music lover that if you want to listen to the same stuff that you've been listening to, that's great. But at the same time, to support the artists, to support the
Right.
art, go and
Right.
listen to someone that you have no idea who they are or that you're not comfortable with or it's
Right.
outside of your realm. I feel like that's like a feedback system with artists is give the effort, put the effort into actually searching or listening to other types of music. Um,
Right. It goes hand in hand with, like, don't shit on people who are at the main stage, right? Like, who wanna be the main stage bitch and, like, only listen to the main stage artist. Like, I still love going to, like, a Zed set. Like,
mhm.
you will not have a bad time. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with liking main stage acts or artists or, like, wanting to be there. So I don't like when people talk bad about those people who enjoy those artists because I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Equal to that, though, is what you're saying, like, give the people that you don't really know, those openers, those people on the earlier time slots, give those people a chance too, because you might be surprised that they sound similar to something you already like, or they expose you to something that you like something new that you end up liking. And it's
Mhm.
kind of cool to like kind of follow someone's journey from the beginning if they end up, continuing to grow in popularity. And then you're like, I watched you rise up. Like that's a cool thing to witness as well. So like also be willing to give those people a chance too.
Yes, and I think for me, when I was doing more search through Instagram, it did come up to me where I'm like, okay, it what made sense for me when I started searching more on Instagram, rephrasing that, is when you look at people's record labels, you can discover a lot of artists that you might like actually better than them.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that happened for me with Charlotte DeWitt. Like I looked at her record label and I discovered Amazing Blaze, who is kind of this in between of techno and trance. And so just as an example of, do a little bit of exploring with those artists that you do like, because you might find someone you actually love more than them. Not in like a they're bad or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's just a fun way to connect the
It's the same
dots.
way, like, if you're using Apple Music or Spotify, and it'll kinda create its own playlist based on, like, oh, like, you like Miss Monique, and then it, like, will put a bunch of her songs, but then it, like, puts a bunch of other artists that you don't, like, have their songs saved or anything. I've discovered a lot of music that might not even necessarily be new, but, like, new to me from, like, letting Spotify choose my selections based on a song that I had started playing, and then it just kinda, like, does its own thing, and I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute." Like, I have discovered people and songs that way, for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
So, like, while I am, like I just said, one to put my on repeat playlist on repeat over and over again all day for weeks at a time, I also do like to periodically just, like, hit one song and then just let
Let it
Spotify choose what comes after that because
yes.
that's fun. I discover, like, new music that way also.
Yeah, song radio has been probably my favorite way on Spotify to do exactly that. Just like, oh, I really like this vibe. hit me up with something else that's like it, you know? It's amazing that it works like that.
Yeah,
Put me on
yeah, no, it's
Spotify.
crazy. It's crazy. So speaking of Spotify, this is how we can like kind of wrap this up.
Yes.
Do we want to do like predictions on what we think our Spotify wrapped artists will be? Because I'm like kind of thinking about this and I'm like, I don't know, because I have been like all over the place this
Yeah,
year. Like in the
same.
past years, I can look back and be like, no, it's definitely probably going to be this artist. And I'm usually right. Like they're either their top one or two. And this year, like, I don't know because it's like each quarter of the year, I kind of like had like a little obsession with people.
Mhm.
And so I don't know where it's going to land. Like, I'm sort of curious. So I can go over my predictions, but I really don't know who's going to be first.
Me, I'll predict my own first artist because it's gonna be a combo of some little toddler songs and my actual artist. I have a feeling that Four Strings is gonna take over again for me in terms of trance because I listened
Really?
to Four Strings excessively this year, excessively. And then in terms of, like, actual current artists, AKKI, I think, would be in there. He's German, and I just love his sound. There's a lot of emotion through his techno.
Actually don't think it will be Cascade this year. As much as I love him and I would still list him as like one of my probably top 3 artists ever. Um, I don't think I've listened to him a lot. Like, I have listened to him, not as much as in the years past, so I don't think he would be a top artist. I think that John Summit has a high probability of being the top because everything he releases, like, I binge it
Mhm.
for weeks. So he
Can't
has a
believe
good chance. I think Cream has a good chance because I was on, like, a kick with them in the spring. So, not as much like the second half of the year, but I definitely, like, went in on them the first half, so they have a good chance. Disco Lions might have a good chance because I had a little obsession with him too. Seven Lions, also he's always somewhere usually in the top 5. But his stuff that he's been releasing this year, I've really, really liked, and a lot of it, especially his like, the stuff that he's releasing on this new album, sounds like the stuff that, like, initially pulled me into his music.
true.
So, it's very easy for me to, like, to binge it, to, like, repeat it over and over because it sounds like the stuff that I first fell in love with.
Yeah.
So I think he has a good shot too. So I don't know, John Summit, Cream, Seven Lions, I feel like it's a good shot that they're gonna be on there. I don't know who's gonna be first. I could be totally wrong. I feel like I'm forgetting people, but,
No, that sounds
um,
about right in summary for you based on, like, what you've been
yeah.
putting out. I think that makes sense. I was just gonna say one more artist I'll add to it is probably I think you'd say TRYM. Like, I don't know, how do you make that into a
I think
word?
it's Trem. I think it's Trem. I think it's Trem.
So Trim, I
Yeah.
think is gonna be on. I had a couple of songs that I was obsessed with from him, so
That shit is like
yeah,
that is
exactly.
heavy. That's heavy
Yeah,
techno.
but that's the
Yeah,
kind of
I've seen
I
him.
like, that him,
Mhm.
Amazing Blaze, AKKI, and Four Strings Forever.
That is so funny that the differences and, like, what is probably gonna be top, yeah. I feel like Gorgon City could maybe potentially be on there, but I'm not this is one of those, like, Spotify recommending tracks. I was on a Gorgon City kick and, like, binging and repeating their songs, but it was their older stuff. Their older stuff got, like, recommended to me, and I was like, "When did this come out?"
Really,
And I say
really
older,
good.
it's like 2022 or 21, like, it's not super recent, but, like, that's the kinda stuff, and I was like, "Those songs are, like, on my repeat playlist," and I'm like, "They could be a top artist too," but it's their older, like, kind of, like, from a past, like, few years ago stuff is what I was, like, gravitating towards.
But it's still new for
Um,
you, so it's just as
it's still
fresh.
new for
Okay.
me, so,
I
yes,
love
I'm curious how it's gonna land. Um, yeah, it's always interesting to see your rap, so we'll see if we were right when that comes out.
I love it. Well, to be continued. I'm excited to see what the Spotify Wrapped gives us.
Alrighty, that's all for now. Bye.